There are some people you never forget, no matter how many neon cycles flicker past. One of them for me was Logan. His last name doesn't really matter anymore. He's joined the ranks of the digital beyond, where there's no need for retinal scans or credits for passage. Logan, with his slow, calculating gaze and a grin that could light up even the darkest undercity alleys. His generosity? Borderline reckless. Logan and Carter were inseparable during our last downtime in Neo-London. It was a cruel twist when Carter got hit with a viral implant failure and had to get grounded back at the Nexus. Logan pushed on with us to Olympus Point, where the mission was to delay a syndicate convoy armed to the teeth. They had drones, hover tanks, and God knows what else. We had one battered squad and a lot of guts. It was a suicide run, but the order was to buy 48 hours for evac routes to clear. Logan was packing an Aegis 9000, an old-school anti-tank rail gun most people wouldn't touch with a pulse glove. Heavy, impractical, but it packed a punch if you could aim steady. When the firefight started, Logan broke from our position and charged down to an exposed hoverway below. Word came back later, relayed through our neural comms. Logan had disabled a syndicate hover tank with that railgun, but when the crew dismounted to assess the damage, he practically begged command to let him take another shot. I took out the tank. Logan's voice crackled, desperate. Just let me finish the job. They denied him, low on ammo and priorities set elsewhere. It didn't matter. Opportunities like that weren't going to come again. The order came down to retreat. Squad 6 pulled out first, and we were next. By the time we regrouped, Logan wasn't with us. The uplinks went silent, and we assumed the worst. As we trekked back to the extraction zone, all we could do was curse and hope. Then, as we hit the outskirts of Tempe's neon ruins, a battered hover bike screeched to a halt beside us. There he was, Logan, sitting on the bike's glowing engine block, railgun slung across his back, grinning like he'd just beaten death. Maybe he had. Logan didn't stop with us. He volunteered for the Crete uprising, while the rest of us routed back to Nexus Prime. Carter was waiting for us there, practically tearing up as he asked the question we all dreaded. Where's Logan? He made it, right? We told him what we knew, how Logan had been last seen with Commander Harlow's team en route to Crete. It wasn't much, but it was all we had. The battle for Crete was chaos, drones raining plasma, syndicate paratroopers dropping like storms. Of the 300 operatives who reached the island, maybe 100 came back. Carter's hope stayed intact. When Logan's back, we're going full throttle at the Hollow Lounge, he said. A whole week of synth booze on me. The survivors arrived days later. Carter stood at the front of the crowd, scanning every scarred face. But Logan wasn't there. Finally, someone pulled Carter aside. They kept their tone clipped, the way mercs do when emotions threaten to break through. They told him Logan hadn't made it back. He'd held the line at a critical junction, clearing a field with no cover to get a better shot. "Get back to the barricade, you lunatic," one of his squad mates had yelled. Logan just grinned, that same slow, lopsided grin. "They can't hit what they can't see," he joked, patting his optic camouflage implant. But the syndicate could see him, clear enough to land a precision shot right between his eyes. Carter walked away in silence after hearing that. No one tried to stop him. He didn't hide the tears streaming down his face, and honestly, no one expected him to. Logan's absence hit us like a bad data crash, unexpected and devastating. Carter wouldn't stop pacing, muttering something about how it should have been him. The silence from the rest of the team said enough. Logan wasn't just a squad mate, he was the glue holding this fragile operation together. Me? I buried my grief in the cold efficiency of prepping for our next Op Olympus was a disaster, sure, but the syndicate didn't pause to mourn. Neither could we. Their latest tech, a neural override system called the Whisper, was already making waves in the underground circuits. Rumors said it wasn't just tech, it was a game changer, a way to hack minds instead of machines. Logan would have been the first to volunteer for recon. In his memory, I took the lead. The mission brief pulsed into my neural implant, scrolling across my optic display in sharp, sterile text. Coordinates pointed us to a syndicate outpost buried deep in Delta 17, a slum where neon lights cast long shadows and the air reeked of burnt circuits. Delta wasn't exactly a place for amateurs. Its industrial sprawl was a labyrinth of abandoned factories, gang-controlled streets, and flickering hollow ads that never slept. But it was also where the syndicate thrived. If the Whisper had a home base, this was it. We prepped for hours. My combat suite synced seamlessly with my gear, optics calibrated, pulse rifle humming, reflex enhancers pushed to their limits. Every system reported green, but my gut told me otherwise. Carter caught me staring into the holomap. Nervous, Vane? I shot him a smirk. Only if you're covering my 6. Delta 17 was worse than I imagined. The syndicate outpost stood out against the decay like a polished dagger in a scrapyard, clean, fortified, and crawling with enforcers. Auto turrets scanned the perimeter, their barrels gleaming under harsh LED floodlights. We moved fast, shadows weaving between shadows. The first breach went smoother than expected. No alarms, no resistance. Too smooth. As we slipped into the outpost's core, the silence grew louder. My HUD blinked warnings I couldn't quite place. Something felt wrong. And then, the lights died. Movement, Carter hissed, his voice tight. Red markers erupted across my display. Syndicate enforcers, armed with plasma rifles and cloaking implants. The air around them shimmered like heat waves, distorting their forms. I dove behind cover, my pulse rifle humming to life. Plasma bolts lit up the darkness, slicing through the air with lethal precision. My optics tracked trajectories, calculating milliseconds to dodge or fire. It wasn't enough. "We're pinned," someone yelled. I didn't bother checking who. That's when I saw it. A figure moved through the chaos, faster than any human had a right to. Their silhouette blurred at the edges, like they were caught mid-glitch. They didn't just dodge bullets, they danced through them. Before I could process what I was seeing, they were on me. A blade flashed, cybernetic, sharp enough to split atoms, and I barely managed to roll out of the way. "What the hell is that?" Carter's voice crackled over comms. No one answered. I raised my rifle, lining up a shot, but the figure moved faster than I could react. Their blade sliced the barrel clean off, sparks flying as my weapon disintegrated in my hands. It wasn't until they paused, standing just a few feet away, that I saw their face. Logan. It was him, or what was left of him. His eyes were blank, glowing faintly with the telltale light of neural implants. His movements were mechanical, precise, like a marionette on invisible strings. "Stand down," I shouted, hoping, praying that some part of him could still hear me. But Logan didn't respond. Instead, he lunged, his blade aimed straight for my chest. The fight was a blur. Logan moved like a ghost, his strikes almost too fast to track. My combat suite screamed warnings as I dodged and deflected, every movement a desperate gamble. "Vane, we can't keep this up." Carter's voice was frantic, almost drowned out by the chaos. "We don't have a choice," I shot back, gritting my teeth. That's when I saw it, the neural mesh embedded at the base of Logan's skull. It pulsed with energy, a soft blue glow barely visible through the chaos. "Cover me," I yelled, charging forward. Carter laid down, suppressing fire as I closed the distance, dodging another swing of Logan's blade. I grabbed his shoulder, driving my EMP implant into the neural mesh. A surge of energy burst from my hand, frying the circuitry in a shower of sparks. Logan froze, his blade inches from my throat. "Astra," his voice was faint, cracked, like a memory struggling to resurface. And then he collapsed. The outpost was a smoking ruin by the time we extracted. Logan's body was gone, swallowed by the chaos. But his face, his voice stayed with me. Back at base, I replayed the footage from my optic logs over and over. That moment when his eyes flickered, when he said my name, it wasn't just a glitch. It couldn't be. "What now?" Carter asked, his voice hollow. I clenched my fists, my jaw tightening. "We find the Whisper. And we end it. For good." The silence in the base was heavier than usual. No one knew what to say, and honestly, neither did I. The realization that Logan wasn't just gone but had been twisted, turned into a tool by the Syndicate, was too much for most of us to handle. I leaned against the cold metal wall, the faint hum of my neural implant syncing with base systems the only thing keeping me tethered. My mind kept looping back to that brief flicker of humanity in his eyes when he said my name. Logan was still in there, somewhere, and I had to bring him back. Or stop him before the Syndicate used him for something worse. The base AI chimed in, its synthetic voice cutting through my thoughts. Astra, decrypted Syndicate transmission detected. Priority level, critical. I pushed off the wall and swiped the air in front of me to open the feed. Coordinates blinked into existence on my HUD, alongside a grainy image of a towering facility bathed in neon light. The Whisper's main development hub. The AI continued. Data suggests extensive security measures, including automated defense drones, counter-hacking systems, and high-level neural override protocols. Carter appeared behind me, his usual cocky demeanor replaced by a grim determination. "You're not going alone, Vane." I didn't argue. This wasn't the time for lone wolf stunts. The team would need every edge we could get, and I trusted them with my life, even if I wasn't sure I trusted myself to face Logan again. We geared up in silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. My combat suit felt heavier than usual, or maybe that was just the weight of what we were about to do. The pulse rifle on my back hummed as it synced with my neural interface, its energy core glowing faintly. I adjusted the settings on my cybernetic arm, ensuring the EMP emitter was primed. It had worked once before, but I wasn't counting on getting that lucky again. The ride to the facility was tense. The hovercraft skimmed low over the cityscape, neon lights reflecting off its sleek surface. Below us, Delta 17 sprawled out in chaotic brilliance, a patchwork of towering skyscrapers and crumbling ruins. The Syndicate had its claws in every corner of this place, but their heart was here, pulsing with the same cold efficiency as the Whisper itself. As we approached the coordinates, the facility loomed into view. It was a fortress of glass and steel, its surface rippling with holographic projections of Syndicate propaganda. Automated turrets tracked us as we descended, but our stealth systems kept us off their radar for now. We landed on a secluded rooftop, the team disembarking in practiced silence. Carter took point, his sniper rifle scanning the area for hostiles. Behind him, Flynn and Mara moved with synchronized precision, their augmented limbs making barely a sound on the metal surface. I brought up the rear, my focus split between the mission and the flickering image of Logan in my mind. The first layer of security was almost laughably easy to bypass. Flynn's hacking rig made short work of the automated drones patrolling the perimeter, and Mara disabled the locks with a quick burst from her plasma torch. But as we moved deeper into the facility, the resistance stiffened. Syndicate enforcers emerged from the shadows, their armor gleaming under the harsh LED lights. They fought with the precision of machines, their movements eerily synchronized. The firefight was brutal. Plasma bolts lit up the corridor as we ducked and weaved, returning fire with everything we had. My pulse rifle thrummed with each shot, the recoil absorbed by my cybernetic enhancements. Flynn went down first, a bolt catching him in the shoulder and spinning him to the ground. Mara dragged him behind cover, her own arm smoking from a glancing hit. Carter shouted over the comms, "We're not going to make it at this pace." He wasn't wrong. The enforcers just kept coming, wave after wave, as if they had an endless supply of bodies to throw at us. Then the lights flickered, and everything stopped. The enforcers froze mid-movement, their heads snapping toward the far end of the corridor. A figure stepped out of the shadows, and my heart sank. It was Logan. But this wasn't the Logan I knew. His movements were sharper, more controlled, like a predator stalking its prey. The neural mesh at the base of his skull glowed brighter than before, pulsating in rhythm with his steps. His eyes, once warm and full of life, were now cold and unrecognizable. "Astra Vane," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "You should have stayed away." I didn't respond. My grip tightened on my rifle, but I couldn't bring myself to raise it. Logan tilted his head, as if studying me. "The Whisper has shown me the truth. You fight for a world that doesn't deserve saving." Carter moved to step forward, but I held up a hand to stop him. "Logan," I said softly, taking a step toward him. "This isn't you. Whatever they've done, we can fix it. You don't have to do this." He laughed, a harsh, mechanical sound. "You still don't get it, do you? I'm not a prisoner. I'm free." Before I could respond, he lunged. The fight was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Logan was faster, stronger, and more precise than any opponent I'd faced before. His blade danced through the air, forcing me to rely on every ounce of my training and cybernetic enhancements just to keep up. Carter and Mara tried to help, but Logan moved like a ghost, dodging their attacks with ease. He was toying with us, drawing the fight out as if to prove a point. Then I saw it, the faint flicker in his movements, a momentary glitch in the neural mesh. It was a weakness, and it was my only chance. "Distract him," I shouted. Carter didn't hesitate, opening fire with his sniper rifle. The shots forced Logan to shift his focus, giving me the opening I needed. I activated the EMP emitter in my arm and lunged forward, driving it into the base of his skull. The surge of energy crackled through the air, and Logan froze, his body convulsing as the neural mesh short-circuited. For a moment, everything was still. Then Logan collapsed, his breathing shallow but steady. I knelt beside him, my hands trembling as I deactivated the emitter. His eyes fluttered open, and for the briefest of moments, they were clear. "Astra," he whispered, his voice weak. "You have to stop them." The whisper, "It's more than you think." Before I could ask him what he meant, his eyes rolled back and he went limp. The facility's alarms blared, snapping me back to reality. Mara hoisted Logan onto her shoulder, and we made a break for the exit. Syndicate reinforcements were closing in, but we fought our way through, adrenaline and desperation driving us forward. By the time we reached the hovercraft, we were battered, bloodied, but alive. Logan was still unconscious, his body limp as we secured him in the med bay. Carter slumped into a seat, his face a mask of exhaustion. As the hovercraft lifted off, I stared out at the neon-drenched city below, my mind racing. Logan's words echoed in my head, a warning I couldn't ignore. The whisper wasn't just a weapon, it was something far worse. And if we didn't stop it, it would consume everything. The hum of the hovercraft's engine was the only sound cutting through the heavy silence. Logan's limp body was strapped securely in the med bay, the faint glow of his neural mesh now dim and erratic. Mara worked on stabilizing him, her cybernetic fingers moving with practiced precision as she connected a diagnostic pad to the back of his neck. I sat slumped against the wall, staring at the city lights below as they blurred into streaks of color. The weight of what he'd said, "It's more than you think," settled deep in my chest like an unshakable shadow. Carter broke the silence, his voice low and sharp. "We should have left him." He didn't look at me, just kept his gaze fixed on the weapon he was cleaning. "He's a liability, Astra. You saw what he's capable of. What makes you think we can trust him?" I didn't answer immediately. My mind churned with memories of Logan before the Syndicate got to him. The way he used to laugh, his crooked grin lighting up even the darkest days. But that wasn't the man strapped to the medbay table now. That Logan was gone, replaced by something colder, more calculated. Still, I couldn't bring myself to give up on him. Not yet. "He's still in there," I said finally, my voice quieter than I intended. "I saw it. We just have to pull him out." Carter scoffed, shaking his head. "You're betting all our lives on a hunch." "It's not a hunch," I snapped, turning to face him. "It's a fact. The Syndicate hasn't completely overwritten him. If they had, he wouldn't have warned me about the whisper." Carter opened his mouth to argue, but Mara cut him off. "Enough," she said, not looking up from her work. "We don't have time for this. If Astra says we can save him, we try. End of discussion." Flynn groaned from where he was lying on a makeshift cot, his injured shoulder wrapped in layers of bandages. "I'm with Mara. We've come this far, might as well see how much deeper this rabbit hole goes." The tension in the cabin eased slightly, though Carter's scowl remained. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and turned back to the window. The lights of Delta 17 were fading behind us, replaced by the endless sprawl of the neon wastes. This was the edge of the city, where the syndicate's influence thinned, but danger lurked around every corner. We'd be safe here for a while, but not long. When we finally touched down at one of our safe houses, the hovercraft's landing gear groaned under the weight. The place was little more than a rusted-out bunker hidden beneath a derelict warehouse, but it was secure. Mara and Carter carried Logan inside while Flynn hobbled behind, wincing with every step. I lingered outside for a moment, scanning the dark horizon. The syndicate wouldn't let this slide. They'd come for us, and when they did, we'd need to be ready. Inside, the team settled into their roles with practiced efficiency. Mara worked on stabilizing Logan, hooking him up to an array of medical devices scavenged from black market suppliers. Flynn busied himself fortifying the bunker's defenses, his injured arm cradled against his chest. Carter cleaned and calibrated our weapons, his movements precise and mechanical. I pulled up the data we'd extracted from the Whisper's facility, scrolling through lines of encrypted code as my neural implant worked to decipher it. The files were a mess, fragments of reports, schematics, and video feeds all jumbled together. But one thing was clear. The Whisper wasn't just a tool for controlling minds. It was evolving. The Syndicate had developed an AI core capable of learning and adapting, and they were using Logan as a test subject. If they succeeded, they'd have an army of soldiers who were not only obedient but intelligent and self-sufficient. It was the kind of power that could tip the balance of the entire neon wastes in their favor. I didn't realize how long I'd been staring at the data until Mara's voice broke through my thoughts. He's stable for now. I looked up to see her wiping blood off her hands, her face drawn with exhaustion. But his neural mesh is a mess. Whatever the Syndicate did to him, it's deeply embedded. Removing it without killing him will be tricky. How tricky? Carter asked, his tone flat. Mara hesitated. Best case scenario, he wakes up disoriented but intact. Worst case, he doesn't wake up at all. I nodded slowly, my chest tightening. Then we don't have a choice. We have to try. Over the next few days, we worked in shifts, taking turns guarding the bunker, running diagnostics on Logan, and poring over the Syndicate data. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, twisted, unfamiliar, yet still holding traces of the man I used to know. I couldn't let him slip away. Not like this. It was on the fourth day that the breakthrough came. My neural implant buzzed with an alert, and the screen in front of me lit up with decrypted files. Buried within the data was a schematic for the Whisper's AI core, along with a set of override protocols. If we could infiltrate the Syndicate's central hub and upload the protocols, we could potentially shut the whole system down, including whatever was controlling Logan. The plan was insane, bordering on suicidal, but it was our only shot. I gathered the team in the bunker's main room, laying out the details. Carter's expression darkened as I spoke, but he didn't interrupt. When I finished, the silence was deafening. "You're out of your mind," he said finally, his voice low and sharp. "We barely made it out of the last facility alive, and now you want to waltz into their headquarters?" "I'm not asking you to come," I said, meeting his gaze. "But I'm going with or without you." Mara stepped forward, her cybernetic arm gleaming in the dim light. "You're not doing this alone, Astra." "I'm in." Flynn groaned, rubbing the back of his neck. "Guess I better tag along too. Someone's gotta keep you two out of trouble." Carter muttered something under his breath, but eventually nodded. "Fine. But if this goes south, don't say I didn't warn you." We spent the next few hours preparing, checking, and rechecking our gear. The tension was palpable, each of us acutely aware of the stakes. When the time came to leave, Logan was still unconscious, his breathing shallow but steady. I paused by his side, my hand resting briefly on his shoulder. "We'll bring you back," I whispered. "I promise." The Syndicate's headquarters loomed ahead, a monolith of steel and glass bathed in neon light. The air buzzed with the hum of drones and the faint crackle of electricity. This was it, the point of no return. We moved through the shadows, our movements synchronized and silent. The first wave of security was easy to bypass, but as we delved deeper, the resistance stiffened. Syndicate enforcers poured into the corridors, their weapons blazing. The fight was chaos. Plasma bolts lit up the darkness as we pushed forward, our bodies moving on pure adrenaline. Carter's sniper rifle took down enemies with precision, while Mara's plasma blade cut through the fray like a hot knife through butter. Flynn and I worked in tandem, his EMP grenades disabling drones while I provided cover fire. By the time we reached the central core, we were battered and bloodied, but still standing. The AI core pulsed with a sinister glow, its presence almost tangible. I moved to the terminal, my hands shaking as I connected my neural implant. The override protocols loaded slowly, each second stretching into an eternity. Then the alarms blared. The doors slammed shut behind us and a voice echoed through the chamber. "You should have stayed away, Astra." Logan stepped into the room, his movements fluid and deliberate. The glow of his neural mesh was brighter than ever, casting eerie shadows across his face. He raised his weapon, and I realized with a sinking feeling that there was no more time to reason with him. This was the final stand.